Hello, everyone. I'm Mystery.
And I am Mortimer, the Authenticator, and we are the Duality of Man.
Today, we're talking about the duality of man and pride, and there's a lot to talk about this year. Um, Things aren't going so well for uh, the Alphabet Mafia.
And I hereby give my gay card to shield everyone who might criticize such things.
I mean,
Because because I can do that.
it seems like they have finally pushed too far. Like the camel's back is broken, and now people are just fed up.
I mean, do we even need to mention the map advocacy? The 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 totally not pedo advocacy all of a sudden?
Yeah, that is just wild. It's like, oh, like when they've gone down that route, it's like mask off admitting, yes, we are evil.
But like okay, and once I know I'm a broken record with regards to this point, but there was a time not so many decades ago when this was the like hysterical fear-mongering tradcon position of if we let the gays have marriage and equality then they'll start advocating for pedophiles and whatnot, and it's like maybe I'm being naive, but like we were correct to call that hysterical fear-mongering when it was. But then when some people apparently turn around and go, Chad, yes to that, I just don't even anymore. Like what? I have lost my ability to even with this shit.
Uh, you what it you got infiltrated, and they started hiding behind you like a body shield.
Or there was some percentage of people who were always going to do this, and that again, I still maintain that the hysterical fear mongering family values evangelicals were in the wrong decades ago. It just so happens that some people apparently just went and embraced the straw man like nobody's business to own the churches or something, and now here we are.
Nelson's in the chat. Hello, Nelson. Um, I gotta say, it really has like gotten to the point where like it needs to go like unconditionally. It needs to go because this has gotten to the point where it's outright hostile, in my opinion.
And I'm
Um,
I'm ge- I'm genuinely worried because just like I previously just outlined, the more absurd these people act, the more credible the crazies from yesteryear look, and the more likely I am to be strung up by a streetlight somewhere one of these days. And I
I
really
know,
don't want to die for these people because I don't
I know
agree with
lots
them.
of gay people are speaking out about this. The only problem being that those people aren't getting the signal boost. It's the crazy people who are getting the signal boost, so that makes it look like they're all crazy.
Because we are the moral ones, herder derp. Like, oh, just a. For one thing, the idea that a demographic has some sort of hive mind, by the way, I will maintain this until my dying breath. Identities, especially those based on demographics, are not hive minds and don't have some sort of philosophical or ideological commitment to each other. But
Yeah,
never
I
mind, I
know.
guess.
Yeah, like if you criticize like the vile, pedophilic, downright disgusting
The
things to
map
do,
advocates, I think we have to
yeah,
say for
like
YouTube.
map advocates. God, that's fucking disgusting term. But like they act as if you're criticizing like all gay people everywhere, which is just outright ridiculous. And you know, if you even just say, "Hey, we don't want this around children," they act like they're being like attacked and oppressed. I'm like, you don't have a right to sexually perform in front of somebody else's kids. Like, what the heck is wrong with you? It's like these people have no moral center whatsoever.
Well, actually, the problem is they do. It's just their moral center is spiting literally everything that seems like sensible or rational. That's what they consider a moral virtue to be, and and that's the problem. That's the whole reason why I keep bringing up that both sides are ultimately fucked. Point is, it's not a case of fighting morality with morality. It's you both have to learn to let things go and shut the fuck up eventually. Like, just because the trad cons were wrong previously doesn't mean the SJWs now have carte blanche to do whatever they want. And just because the SJWs are wrong now doesn't mean I want to live in an Amish theocracy in 10 years.
Like, I'm not advocating for a honest theocracy, but it really just does seem like a lot of the things that they are promoting are just things that are bad for society and bad for people, like
Yeah.
um, sexual promiscuity, um, obviously maps. Um, uh, they are promoting gender confusion. It's not that just somebody is gender confused, but they are like promoting it.
That
Um,
they actually consider it gender affirming to literally obfuscate the connection between biology and gender at any given
yeah,
point.
indulgence of like whatever vice you can imagine.
And I mean, to some degree, I can like there's a leeway there where I'm like, okay, if you're not harming anyone, then fill your boots. But
But here's the
they've
thing.
crossed that line now 500 times to Sunday. They will actively harm people they don't ideologically agree with on the ground that those people are immoral in exactly the same way as the tradcons of yesteryear signed people up for conversion of electroshock therapy and shit.
Well, Dalton, I would make the argument that even if it's not harming somebody else, I think it's wrong for people to advocate for something that people would do that would hurt them, that would hurt themselves.
Again,
I
there's a
mean,
gray area here
well,
because
here's the thing: people are
that
going to do
way
things
goes the
that are.
banning of like cigarettes and alcohol and every other
Here's the thing:
freaking thing that makes white force living.
people are going to do things that harm themselves. There's no way to stop people from like ever doing that. But I don't think it's something that should be you know, promoted as if it is good. It is good. Like there's people saying
Yeah,
that it is good to
at
do things
most it should be
that
treated
harm.
indifferently. That's where I'm sitting. Like, I don't care if what you do harms you and only you, but don't treat it like a virtue. Don't don't necessarily treat it like the worst thing in the world either, but don't treat it like a virtue. That's where I'm kind of sitting.
Yeah, and you know, I think really the whole this massive wave of backlash, I think, really began with Bud Light and Dylan Mulvaney. I think that was the just the point where lots of people just said no.
Well, as V has been very consistent and good for him in pointing out, it wasn't even the Dylan Mulvaney thing. It was the it was the stated impetus behind the Dylan Mulvaney thing of, well, our customer base are fratty, douchey, NASCAR loving, out of touch, yada yada yada, rednecks, and so on and so forth, and we want to exchange these morally inferior bunkins for the for their betters, basically. That was that, I think that was what did it more than anything. I don't even think it's necessarily about Dylan Mulvaney. I think it's about, as usual, the active contempt for what, for consistency's sake, we can call a fan base. Like, our customers are immoral. We shun and shame them until they either improve themselves or get replaced by their betters. That's the impetus, I think, that really broke the camel's back. It was like the company going out of its way to say, not only do we want people other than you, we actively don't want you. And so all of those, fratty NASCAR loving redneck sorts of people, were like, okay, you don't want us, we'll just leave. Good for you then. And and they didn't like the results of that because, as it turned out, a sizable majority of their customer base was that and only that. Because let's face it, Bud Light isn't Bud Light isn't valuable because of the taste. It's valuable because it's a light enough beer that you can knock back 6 or 7 of them and feel just tipsy or just drunk enough to have a good time at a sporting event, a frat party, or a NASCAR race. That's what Bud Light is for. No one likes it for the taste, really.
I mean, I think that the replacing of the old customer base was definitely a major part of it, but I still think that a lot of people just got um, put off when they saw the Dylan Mulvaney Bud Light video because a lot of people do find this person very off-putting.
Yeah, I don't. I I can believe that some people just on the knee jerk didn't like the ad. I don't think they would have gone as strongly boycotting it if it weren't for the clip of the woman literally going, our customer base are morally inferior, so GTFO, and be replaced by your betters, hopefully.
Yeah, but what do you think about the damage that has been done? Because like the Bud Light brand is sinking like a stone.
It honestly, it's a good thing because so much of the reason why the SJWs have gotten carte blanche to do what they do is because they know that the average person is indifferent enough to such things that only the activists really matter. Well, the only answer to that, sadly enough, is if they gain power by being, by organizing boycotts, by um, being overly litigious and suing people, by going after people's livelihoods and so on, the only way to get to what I want, the win state of nobody gets to bully these corporations around because these corporations have no business taking moral positions, period, is if they equally fear the average, Joe Blow or Jane Blow and the Twitter activists. Because for the longest time, they've gotten input from the Twitter activists and only the Twitter activists, and the Twitter activists got in early so they could poison the well against any grassroots backlash that did happen. Look at the reaction to Gamergate. Oh, we were informed by reliable sources that every single person who dislikes the way we manage our games is a immoral Nazi person. So even though they represent a larger percentage of the market, we don't care because we're going to take a moral stand. Grr. Well,
The-
the only way to actually show them we were right all along is for them to fuck around and find out.
I feel like people have called for boycotts of oil companies before, but it's never really galvanized like this. And I feel like now people are seeing that yes, we can have a strong effect. And now with the whole Target thing is going on, Target's on fire too, and like I've
Well, I
heard like
I think the reason why Bud Light was the straw that broke the camel's back is because the SJWs got so secure in their moral superiority, quote unquote, that they actually did think they could just shame like a quarter to a third of Bud Light's entire consumer base and have them just sit there and take it like good little boys. Um, they actually thought they could go, well, this thing that historically only belongs to sports fans, frat guys, and rednecks is now ours because we say so. I think it's because the majority of people who consume Bud Light were ex- unironically, I think it's because she was right in her description, minus the moral indignation. She just didn't fully grasp the consequences of telling them all to GTFO.
But here's the thing, it was absolutely stupid because they were the number one beer in the country. How do you go up from there?
Um, step six profit? I don't know. Like,
But they've actually fallen. They're now the number two beer in the country.
and still plummeting like a freaking stone because they lost 26% of their stock in a week. That is more than a fourth in a week, and it still is. It's not as significantly dropping. I think it's only at 30 right now, but it's still steadily dropping, and it won't be long now before they will have lost a third of their entire financial security.
Like, this woman has cost them billions upon billions of dollars. Like, if this was a sane company, she would have been fired a long time ago. It's been almost 2 months now. And I think it's been 2 months.
Well, but the same is true of Kathleen Kennedy. She literally cut the Star Wars box office in half between Force Awakens and Last Jedi for all the shenanigans she did, and created the first movie in the Star Wars franchise to ever bomb, and yet she still remains in control of Lucasfilm.
I don't think anybody expects Disney to do the right thing at this point. Disney is the empire.
I yeah, it it reminds me of when we were talking about Rings of Power. It Star Wars is now being written by Palpatine and, or rather, I guess I should call her Darth Kenetius the Incompetent. Um, and Lord of the Rings is currently in the control of a bunch of Melkorites. But
Definitely.
such is the way the world works, I guess.
Yeah. And I've actually been hearing that a lot of companies are now starting to get afraid of putting out promos for Pride Month. And if you've seen on Twitter, like, a lot of companies didn't change their logo like they always do every year. You know, the meme of like it's coming and it's just like a storm of Pride Month logos. A lot of companies didn't change their logos.
Mm-hmm. I I do think that a large percentage of why this is being so effective is because the ESG money is running out and the writer's strike is putting a stranglehold on the ability for these people to weasel social justice into everything. And in absence of the financial incentive of ESG and in absence of the people on the ground actually advocating for this shit because they got too big for their britches and decided we are just as good as the good writers we replaced last time this happened, so we deserve more money, grr. Um, I think the twin storm of those three things and those two things were a powder keg, and then Bud Light, that one woman in Bud Light was just like, I'm a let a match and come what may.
Yeah. Nelson says, I heard a rumor Kathleen Kennedy is getting fired sometime this century. That is fake news. Disney will never fire her and she will die in control.
It, somewhat again. I'm sticking with my Sith Lord analogy. Someone want to throw her down at exhaust shafts and bring balance to the fandom. I
Oh, oh God. I mean, is it is regarding Hollywood, is there anything worth watching on this point? I can't think of anything on TV worth watching.
uh I don't know. Like the Castlevania franchise is getting a continuation starring Richter Belmont at some point, but then again, also Warren Ellis got Me Too'd, and that was his baby. So Lord only knows what they're gonna do to that. Um,
I heard that Good Omens is getting season two, but that's not out yet.
and Lord only knows what 2023 era Neil Gaiman is gonna do to that.
Oh God, that's right.
Because I still maintain 1989 through 1994, hungry, needing to prove himself, Neil Gaiman is not the same Neil Gaiman as we have in 2023. I wish for all the work, like I would. There is scarcely a thing that I would not offer if it meant. Well, there might be a couple things, but there is very little I wouldn't offer to get Neil Gaiman 1989 back. But I think he's dead, Jim. I think we're at that point in the character arc.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Hollywood is well, Hollywood's burning itself to the ground, and quite frankly, I couldn't care less.
It, that's
But
that that is the biggest indictment of all of this is that not only is everything crashing and burning, but among the people on the ground, you have two reactions. You have bang to right indifference, or you have celebration to varying degrees. And unfortunately, it means all of the IPs, all of the consumer products, all of the things that we, children of the 90s and 2000s grew up with that make life worth living, they might wind up going down with the ship. And I don't want that to happen.
Nelson says the Lucifer show got butchered by SJWs in the newer seasons. I turned it off. I don't want to be lectured for how toxic I am for being born a white male. It did get more preachy in the later seasons.
Okay, so just to be clear again, I'm not trying to do like the TradCon PR here, but the writers of the Lucifer show thought it would be a good idea to have the audience be lectured on morality by a character who is nominally and in universe the devil. I again, optics where optics awareness, where are you? Like, and again, I know they kind of went the more Luciferian route with that version of Lucifer, where he was the misunderstood Promethean rebel all along, and he was actually kind of the good guy. I get that, but again, optics, where are you?
I mean, he did get over his dad issues in the end.
Well, good for him. Everybody needs to learn to live out of daddy's shadow right now and again, especially him. But that's yeah.
But yeah, I want to talk to you about a story that's coming out of California. I believe it happened yesterday. Have you heard about this? It was in Glendale, California. A bunch of parents were upset regarding the school's policy regarding not only Pride Month in June, but they were going to do uh, LGBTQ History Month in October, and also about how they're going to, encourage students to use their own pronouns. And when the parents asked for transparency, the school outright refused. And then a bunch of people got upset. There are a bunch of LGBTQ counter protesters, and then fists started flying.
Of course, because violence is the language of the unheard or some shit.
I don't know who threw the first punch, but I know that they were definitely getting into it with the parents.
I'm willing. I would put money on the fact that it was the more Antifa minded amongst the counter protesters.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. But
If I'm wrong, may I be stoned to death by rainbow dildos. But I would put money on it.
apparently, the parents who were protesting were, I believe, they were largely Armenian, and a lot of people saying that Armenians don't back down from a fight ever.
Okay. Well, in that case, it might very well be a case of the famous the famous Muslims versus communist fight that Lenin predicted.
I mean, like, you're blatantly asking to introduce sexual themes to somebody else's children. They're telling you to stop. You say, no, we're not going to stop. Like no rational person would be surprised if a punch got thrown at that point.
I mean, yeah. Again, it's like it's one of those there are no good guys in this scenario thing. Like I don't like I'm not on anyone's side here. Although I will say, for my part, as a gay dude, I'm with Morgan Freeman on the whole themed month concept and themed history concept. Just portray history accurately in all of its facets and don't shy away from any subject matter, and your job is already done. Like, but we can't do that because you see history as a socio-political or moral weapon, don't you know? Derp. I hate this shit so much. And I
Yeah, one
hate
thing,
the American educational system, as I'm sure every person who's ever been in it can can empathize with, because we don't actually learn history in history classes anymore, and as
you know,
far as I'm aware, we never did as long as I've been alive.
instead of focusing on demographics, why not focus on like fields, like people who have contributed to, like, say, engineering or space travel or chemistry or medicine, and then you could talk about people who have all contributed to that field, be they gay, black, Mexican, white. You can get a wide range of people all focused on a particular field, and I think that would be a lot better than just focusing on, hey, here's all the black people in
Well,
this month.
also, well, also more to the point, and this is a criticism I have of how we teach history in this country, and as far as I'm aware, all Western countries, we don't teach that we don't teach that humans have always been human and that we have things in common with our ancestors, or we have things in common with other cultures, or any like we don't focus on the living part of history, the part that would unite us, um, or that would remind us that the people in the past were just as human as we are. It's always a, oh, the people in the past were so backwards and primitive and oppressive, and insert every negative, piece of scrimshaw in the book. Um, and we have nothing in common with them, slash, we are morally superior to them because reasons. And I just, again, maybe it's just me, but I for example, have a love of historic cookbooks, because one of the things I find is, just like so many other social trends or aspects of human nature, there are ancient versions of just about every dish or dessert, like everything that you like as a person. There's probably some ancient version of. Like, there's an ancient version of cheesecake, for crying out loud. There's an ancient version of escargot and that's what I find the most interesting is, across cultures, across times, across demographics, there are things that are universal to human beings, and that imply that whether they had as much verifiable data or not as we did, people in the past were just as intelligent and just as human as we are, and they had reasons for doing the things that we find unusual, just like we have reasons for doing things that they would find unusual, and so on.
I think the perfect example of this is how every culture, even those that never met one another, develop booze in some form or another.
Yeah, and it's funny, but there are actually stories of like warring tribes who made peace literally over a drink. Just like every, just like we would, we bury the hatchet over drinks all the time, and so on.
I remember in history class there was a um like a Sanskrit tablet that they found from some, like, really ancient civilization. I forget which one, but you know what was written on it?
Hmm.
A bunch of people complaining about an incompetent government official.
I oh, the more things change, the more they say. Another really funny example is I, they've obviously been asked. excavating Pompeii for years now, and on the walls of buildings in Pompeii, you will find graffiti, and the graffiti says X person's name was here. And I remember when like people would randomly write that on the whiteboard in like my high school classes and stuff, just as a joke. So if something as specific as a joke like that could be more or less universal to human nature, surely I guess that's the best way to put it. We don't treat history as though it is a living, breathing thing anymore. We treat history like a series of like dates and events on a timeline that have really no bearing to people or the ways they act or think. It's frustrating.
Ed Brewer says exceptional people have a problem with pride because they have real examples of why they should be proud. I mean, that's a great point. I mean, all this talk about pride, I understand when people didn't want to be discriminated against, but in 2023, especially considering how they've like changed it into something that is extremely sexual in nature, like I
Yeah,
see them doing things in parades that people really should not be proud of.
I get I get the impetus. The impetus is just like the impetus of, geek culture pride. I refuse to be shamed by you. You have no moral authority over me. The thing you're accusing me of isn't even a bad thing to be, so I'm going to embrace it. Like that makes sense. That is a perfectly logical, perfectly consistent, perfectly even admirable defiance of arbitrary moral authority. But then, and this is the defining quality for me. When rebels act like rebels, that is the world functioning as it should be. But when the rebels win and they become the establishment, and they still act just as hyper vigilant, hypersensitive as they did when they were the rebellion, that is where you get tyranny. And that's where I'm sitting with this is like we won, we are the establishment now, and therefore we should act responsibly with that power. But rather than embrace Stanley's razor, like any good person with power should, they came up with reasons for abstractly assuming why they didn't have power, why there must still be that cabal of tradcon patriarchs out there somewhere in a volcano plotting how to best oppress the women's, the gays, the blacks, and whoever else.
You know, the more I think about this, the more I come to the conclusion that should oh, crap. I had a thought and then it just completely escaped my head. Damn, I hate when that happens. But there is one thing that I remember seeing online that was really quite extraordinary because I can't even believe they even attempted to try this. It was a Twitter post from an organization. I forget what the name was, but it was explaining how in Islam the Prophet Muhammad was for homosexuality and gender fluidity.
Um,
And by God, the comments and quote tweets.
all of the hadiths, all of the Quran, like he if Mohammed was capable of still spinning in his grave and we hooked a turbine up to him, we would never have to worry about any power resources ever again.
Like, why would you even try this? You know what these people are like.
Like
You, this was, it's
like
just so
okay,
dumb.
like they still throw people off buildings and decapitate people for either homosexuality or sorcery, which is why, as much as I would love to visit some of the Muslim countries, I would be very, very afraid to ever, because I am damned like 5 ways from Sunday with those people. But never mind.
Just pretend to be a mute and don't say anything.
I, but mm, again, I don't think I don't think I could, because like I I would have to say something to stand up for what I believe in, and I can't. Again, that's why as much as I would love to, I probably never will go to any of the Muslim countries, because my Arabian Nights fanboyism, or my love of jinn magic and sihir and stuff, isn't worth literally getting decapitated or castrated for. Or
I
it would
mean,
be if I had any confidence that it would have any meaningful effect. Like if I could murder myself so that nothing like this would ever happen again, I would do it in a heartbeat. But
yeah, I
it,
don't think that's gonna work out.
it's just gonna keep happening. No matter how righteous and self sacrificial I am, it's still gonna keep happening. So nerds.
I will send you a link to this because like the comments and quote tweets were just insane. Also, as I'm sure you can imagine, they ended up disabling the comments at a certain point.
Yep, I'm sure the comments are more triple than me at this point.
Yep, and I don't know if you've been seeing this lately, but people are now saying that the Spider Gwen in the Across the Spider Verse movie is now trans because of the colors of her costume,
But
uh, which existed which
she's
existed years
pregnant. God
ago.
damn it. Oh, not Spider Woman, Spider Gwen. Never mind. I was
Spider
very
Gwen.
confused there for a second. I thought,
I mean, well,
but
in the comics in the universe, like she is referred to as Spider Woman in her own universe.
okay, we know who Gwen Stacy is, and I suppose there could have been a multiverse, a universe within the multiverse where she was a dude, but I don't know. Like, I can buy, I can buy John Stacy or Jen Stacy or something like that, as in the gender flipped version of Gwen Stacy. But I can't buy a version of her who is, or a version of them who is biologically female and or biologically male and still identify as a woman. That strains credulity a little bit.
Yeah,
Maybe I'm
and there's
biased.
also a people also spotted a trans flag on her father's cop uniform, which people are saying that means that she's trans. I think it's just propaganda from the film writers.
I think it's just it might even just be a visual acknowledgement of that's how police virtue signal these days, because of course they do.
I mean,
Like,
if you looked at the British police,
yeah, the rainbow police of vice and virtue, who will literally dance to staying alive in the streets while COVID is happening.
so yeah, a lot of people are getting fed up with pride. Like as I mentioned before with the parents thing, like they're actually getting into fights. Like how far do you think um things are going to go? Because like even though they've been seeing people get upset for a while, they're still trying to push this as hard as they can, and now people are starting to push back. So like I know where we fear this is going to go, but like where do you think like logically it will end up?
I hope that it will end up with people backlashing specifically against the more extreme end of the SJWs, saying you don't represent gay people, and then them shutting the fuck up. I fear a resurgence of tradcon evangelical moralizing, and again, the possibility that I might get lynched over this shit someday.
I don't think we're going to go that far back.
I hope not, but I worry because the more insane the SJWs look, the more people go, well, I guess if it's a choice between the evangelicals and the SJWs, I'll pick the evangelicals, even though that was never the choice. You could just choose neither. You could choose the libertarian option of who gives a fuck about morality in the public sphere. It should belong in the private sphere. Leave everyone alone. But I I just I'm genuinely starting to become afraid because again, it used to be when crazy Bible thumpers would go, if we let the gays have free reign, sooner or later it'll be the pedos herder. It used to be that everyone or the majority of everyone would just laugh at that, but it's getting harder to laugh when there's a certain percentage of people actually doing it.
I mean, they really need to just stop with the schools because that is going to be the biggest point of contention, I believe. Like I heard a video recording about a school in Britain where there were some kids from families that were Muslim, and during Pride Month, or during like Pride Week or whatever they were holding in their school in Britain, the parents took their kids out of school for those days, and then the teacher just started going off about how they're not allowed to do that and how they don't have a choice in learning about this stuff, and that these are the values of the school, and that if they don't align with that, then they should leave. Like the student just went off on this class, and it was really unhinged.
I guess I can hope that the Muslims and the LGBT activists will kill each other, but there's a lot more Muslims than there are LGBT activists, so that's somewhat implausible. And no, I'm not against Islam or Muslims in general. I'm specifically against the fundamentalist Muslims who will not integrate and who would actively see me dead if they had their brothers. So, excuse me, but when you start the conversation with, okay, so you need to be beheaded for sorcery and castrated for being a homosexual, my toleration of you begins to wane significantly.
I mean, there was also an incident that I heard about. I didn't get a chance to look too much into it today, but apparently people were upset about Six Flags, who had a drag event there. And I remember when Six Flags would just do the commercials with the dancing old man, and it looked like fun. But like, what is with all these parks and things? All of a sudden, thinking it's a good idea to have drag shows. Like, I never, I,
Because
I never understood why that's even a thing. Like,
it's the dominant moral paradigm. That's why. Um, the SJWs did at least some of their homework when they co-opted shit, because this is the way historically you always converted a populace to a new religion. You go after whatever their equivalent of kings and clergy are, because you can get the whatever the equivalent of the kings and the clergy on board, and you can basically claim everything good about a civilization is belong to you. Then in a few short generations you will eventually convert everyone. And this is them basically doing their end zone dance that they have successfully co-opted civilization.
yeah. Well, it doesn't really help much that the government is pushing all this as well. I mean, you
Again,
think that
the kings and the clergy, or in
you
this
think
case, the governments and the academia.
you think that the government would be focused on making sure that things work, fixing the economy, lowering the gas prices, trying to and stop nuclear World War III. But no, we need drag queen story hour and drag queen performances in schools and amusement park and God forbid in a state where people don't actually want that pass legislation so that doesn't happen. You then have like judges who will go in and try and override it, saying that it's unconstitutional or whatever, which is just absolute bullshit.
Mm-hmm. There is good news here, and the good news is basically these people will self-destruct. And going back to my history point, my history comparison, they made one fatal mistake, and it's been a fatal mistake they've been making since at least 2013, as far as we know, which is, just like I mentioned, when you want to convert a civilization to a new moral paradigm, you convert whatever their equivalent of kings are, and you convert whatever their equivalent of clergy is. But what you don't do is ever interfere, at least in the first few generations, with their art or anything they do for entertainment or enjoyment. Because as Rome famously very well understood, you can get away with a lot of depravity so long as you provide for the bread and the circuses. But
I
the
think
Esche-
also
Go ahead.
I think also a crucial mistake was going after kids because you were targeting a demographic that parents care about more than themselves. Like parents will die running to a burning building, take a bullet for their children, and you think they won't stand up against you?
Yeah, well, there's that too, but also keep in mind that every the reason why most 20th century ideologies didn't last more than a generation or so, like Nazi Germany lasted about 10 years, um, the Soviet Union lasted about 50 years, etc. The reason why most 20th century ideologies don't succeed, whereas something like the Roman conversion to Christianity did succeed, or the the various wars between the Middle Eastern tribes succeeded, is because they got the clergy and the kings, but they didn't meddle with the bread and circuses. Modern day ideologies, though, always overstretch to the point that they have to get involved in the bread and circuses. And it's exactly the thing that inevitably nerfed the tradcon evangelical argument when they started saying things like rock music and D&D were the devil's tools, or when they started demonizing the goth movement or the punk movement. That was basically the death nail of the tradcons. And it will be it has been the death nail of the SJWs for a long time. That's why I think that's the main reason why they still haven't gotten over things like Gamergate, because they know on some level that as long as entertainment isn't theirs, they won't win. But some of them, I'm sure, also know that if they hadn't have overextended so quickly, they could have boiled the frog and no one would have noticed, but they didn't. And so the backlash started with things like Gamergate, and some version or other of a Gamergate style backlash, be it Comicsgate, be it Fandom Menace, be it whatever, has existed pretty much the whole time. And as the old saying goes, first they ignore you, then they demonize you, then they laugh at you, or actually no, it's laugh and then demonize, and then you win. Well, they've done plenty of the first three, and it would appear that the times they are a changing.
We have some comments. Nelson says, and government is God in communism, which is ultimately what the SJWs want. He also says, Dalton kind of looks like a white Jesus, so I'm willing to hear his good news.
I I don't have any plans to start a religion, folks. It in fact, if you respect my opinions, never start a Daltonism after I'm dead. Please just don't do that. I don't want anyone to start a religion on my account. I appreciate the sentiment, but please don't. My my good news is be an individual, think for yourself, and fuck public displays of morality. So good luck making a religion out of that.
I said, did you guys know there's actually women genuinely fighting for men's rights as well? Yes, we did.
Yes, yes,
There
and
are a number of them.
I have actually spoken to several of them because I am in the Honey Badger Radio Discord. I have spoken at length to Allison Tiemann, and she actually had me be a beta reader for a book that she's writing called The Woden Wall. I haven't gotten to be in there for a while because I had been so freaking busy, but yeah, I've spoken to Allison Tiemann. I've also spoken to her husband Jonathan, and I've played Cards Against Humanity with, or I've sat in on a game of Cards Against Humanity with Dr. Random McCam and Hannah Wallen as well. Never spoken to Karen Strawn though, unfortunately. I keep waiting for Karen to show up in there, but she hasn't shown up in there.
Let's see. Nelson says, nope, it's on. The Church of Dalton will be started by me.
Again, good luck making a religion when the first three commandments are be an individual, think for yourself, and fuck public displays of morality.
Okay, so
Then again, in fairness to JC, there is I believe it's Mark. Is it Mark 3 verses 5 and 6, or is it Mark? No, I think it's Mark 6 versus. It's in Mark somewhere. Something to the effect of be wary of those who display their piety in public. If you truly love me, then uh, display your faith only behind closed doors. Something to that effect. I butchered that entirely, but somewhere in Mark there is a quote that basically amounts to Jesus going, "Fuck virtue signaling." Of course,
yeah,
we know that the church hasn't always lived up to that, but I digress.
there is Deadfish 96. Pride is gay. I mean, he's technically correct.
Well, that's sort of the point, surely. Um, that's very much sort of the exact point of the thing, or at least it should be. Um, but it usually isn't. And in fact, I'm gonna give a personal anecdote now, actually, because when I was in college, I joined the Rainbow Alliance at my school, thinking that it was basically going to be a gay social club for gay people to meet other gay people. Because for those that don't know, gay people are a small enough minority, and some people will react negatively to being hit on by gay people. So it does kind of make some sense to have a gay social club where you know that everyone you meet will be gay. But instead of being the gay social club that I thought Rainbow Alliance was going to be, it turned out to be gay activism, the club. And as a result, I was only in it for a couple weeks. I was in it long enough to get the rainbow armband, but shortly thereafter, I realized that at no point were they going to do any gay mixers or like speed dating or getting to know each other sort of activities, and they were just focused on activism. So I I was in long enough to get the bracelet, and then I left because it, I far be it for me to think this, but shouldn't a gay club actually be about being gay instead of herder my oppression?
So let me ask you, we have an upcoming presidential election. If the current administration loses, do you think that we will get, maybe we will get like, a lot of this LGBTQ map advocacy kind of stuff? Like, do you think we'll be seeing moves to get it like out of government, or do you think it's going to be harder to root out?
Hopefully, the coming the return of the Orange Man will herald the embracing of movements like Gays Against Groomers or the LGB Alliance. Because I think that if the government is only going to listen to interest groups, we do need some quote unquote representation of that kind of thing. But speaking for myself here, and speaking I think for a lot of other people as well, I would prefer if the gay interest group, quote unquote, that the government listened to was people like the LGB Alliance and Gays Against Groomers, i.e., the non ideological people who just happen to be gay. And Mr. Trump, if you ever see this and you want to talk with me about gay issues or men's issues, I would gladly accept. My mom would die of joy, I think, if that happened. She is a much more strident Trump supporter than I am, and I think she would die of joy.
I
But
actually sat in on a Twitter Spaces that Gays Against Groomers was hosting. They were actually super based, but
yeah, I've popped in there a couple times too. I don't usually say anything because usually by the time I find the Gays Against Groomers space, it's so full that I don't feel like I could possibly contribute anything. Um,
what if I was members of Gays Against Groomers? I think if they really want to, gain more support, I think one of the things they should do is start. They should go to their local school meetings and speak out a lot of the stuff that they're putting in their curriculum. And it's really weird that they're putting this stuff in the curriculum when a lot of these big schools in these big cities just completely fail at teaching the core subjects. Like people are being graduated from high school who are functionally illiterate.
to borrow a phrase from V again, people are being taught their OGBTs rather than their ABCs.
Yeah, it's like how can you even call yourself a teacher if you're passing students who don't even know how to read?
I mean, to be fair, that only somewhat has to do with ideological bullshit, because the American educational system is the American educational system, and I will say, as someone who I hope is at least moderately literate, most of the best reading I ever did and most of the best learning I ever did was shit I learned well outside of school or that I learned in conversations with the teachers off the clock, basically.
I think a lot of the best reading I did was when I was reading fantasy books because they'll often use terminology and phrases that you won't hear in everyday life, and it forces you to expand your vocabulary in order to understand the story.
Well, yeah, and it's funny how often that happens. People sneer and deride fiction, like, oh, it's fiction, therefore it by definition doesn't matter and doesn't apply to anything logically herder. But so many concepts in good, well structured fantasy are borrowed from things like history or philosophy or actual, IRL versions of occultism that you can learn. Like I learned a bunch of things about runes just from like um I'm trying to think of some franchises that have used runes before, but like Ben 10, Shannara Chronicles, Legend of the Seeker, those I think the first place I ever learned what runes were was actually in watching the 1978 animated Hobbit movie. Um, so when I was studying history later and runes came up again, I was like, oh hey, this is where they got that from, and so on and so forth. And a lot of concepts can be applicable in unusual situations. Um, to the point that when I took my high school mythology course, but by that time I was well and truly into studying magic, and I had a book on runes. So when we got to Norse mythology, I actually let the professor borrow my rune book so he could give us like riddles in runes to translate. I felt very happy about that when the professor wanted to borrow my rune book. I also once let my chemistry teacher borrow a book on alchemy, and she found it interesting, which again I also found extremely gratifying.
I don't remember when I first heard about runes. I think honestly, I think it was during the game RuneScape.
That's probably a good place to get them from. I mean, it it does what it says on the tin, I suppose.
Uh, yeah, but I honestly, I honestly worry that like what we're seeing now with the fight breaking out over the school protest, that we are going to get to see a lot more violence because we know that like the Antifa people, they do violence without hesitation, but um like obviously people should defend themselves, but I'm just worried that it's going to be increasingly escalated because like just
I worry about the optics fail because the more even justified violence that the parents do or that the Proud Boy type people do in, opposition to Antifa, the easier it's going to be for the MSM and the journalist class and the artistic class to go, see, we told you the tradcons didn't disappear. We told you that the secret patriarchy always existed. Grr. We are
yeah,
completely justified in our activism.
I'm actually less worried about that because public facing the media is in the toilet.
Well, yes, but it must be said that SJWs have their tendrils in every corporation, in every journalistic outlet, in almost every artistic IP, and so on and so forth. I worry slightly about the PR fail if enough people go full, violent evangelical tradcon. Are the powers that be just going to take that and turn it into, see, we told you we were completely justified. We told you that the conservatives would be subhuman if we just joked and poked it, because that's the other thing. Their so much of their egregious activism, they can at least plausibly hide behind it's just a meme, bro. Um, Even though the rate to which it is just a meme varies significantly. It's kind of like the we will convert your children thing. Like, even I know on some level that was supposed to be tongue in cheek. That was supposed to be irreverent joking. But there was enough serious advocacy in that song for me to go, okay, I know what you were going for, but you still did it wrong. Um, and a lot of these egregious things are that same way of like, I know you were trying to be irreverent and jokey and stick it to the powers that be and all, but you still did it wrong. You still are basically you're still saying the quiet part out loud, even while you're trying to sarcastically deny that the quiet part even exists.
I mean, it's one thing for a comedian and a comedy club to make a joke, but it's another thing to joke to make a song about a subject that is actually happening.
Again, it's not even like the premise. Let's make a song about how our conversion would be good conversion because all we're doing is good things. That isn't a stupid idea. The stupid thing is that um because there's more truth to the accusation than they would like, they can't help but throw in good, things that they consider good that other people don't. Like, as an example, in the case of the "We Will Convert Your Children" song, the moment where I lost all ability to defend or even be on the side of that song was the line, "You won't approve of where they go at night to protest," because that's not a universal message of tolerance. That's not just gay people being gay. That is an assumption that to be gay is to be an activist and to have an ideological axe to grind. The fact that you think that ideological axe to grind is universally good is to me no more a limiting factor in my ire than the tradcons going, how could Christians ever do anything wrong? We have the objective morality of God on our side, herder. Yeah, you're still doing terrible shit. Like the fact that burning the woman at the stake was, in your opinion, objectively moral, um, doesn't quiet my desire to not get burned at the stake. You see,
She was a witch, Dalton. We had no choice.
never mind that the the question really should be, was she doing any harm with her magic or not, or is she even a magic user or not? But again, let's not. Actually, to be fair, in some of the witch trials, they did bother to make that distinction. That's why the word for witchcraft in Latin, um, that was actually used in witch trials, was maleficia, because it wasn't just like we have a straw man, and I mentioned this before, but we have a straw man view of the witch trial era where any magic at all was considered witchcraft by definition and therefore was considered bad. That's not true though. There were plenty of kinds of magic that were not considered um, to be maleficia. Maleficia specifically was when you used magic to harm other people or through some kind of infernal agency. There were even cases where, um, and I think we mentioned this before in the Duality of Men and Witchcraft. There was a guy who was accused of being a werewolf, and he got off by claiming that he was a secret member of a sect of werewolves known as the Hounds of God, who were empowered by angels to fight demons in hell. And they let him off for it because he demonstrated that his magic wasn't malefic in nature. So yeah, fair enough.
I gotta say, that's so crazy. Part of me wants it to be true.
Yeah, I know. It's like I don't know if this is true. I've seen weirder things in my time as an occultist, so it's entirely plausible. And also the fact that it works sort of implies that it was true.
But let's end this on a lighter note. I don't know if you heard about this incident that went down. This was revealed yesterday, but
Mhm.
apparently Ellen Page, now calling herself Elliot Page,
Yeah,
um,
the
talked
yeah.
about a incident that occurred in, I believe it was West Hollywood, where she was accosted by some gentlemen who claimed that they wanted to gay bash her and said that this is why they need guns.
Jesse
Now, this actually
Smollett,
brings
is
to
that you?
this. Would you say?
I said Jesse Smollett, is that you?
I was just about to say this calls to mind another incident with another actor who is gay. Uh, he is sometimes called Juicy Smollett, and he claimed to have been attacked by MAGA supporters at 2 in the morning in Chicago in the middle of winter.
Who called him by the name of the show he was in, because apparently that's something that MAGA chuds white supremacist types would know? Question mark. I it, Also small print. It turned out that these alleged white supremacists were black Haitians. But oh well.
Yes, it is also there's also a bit of aligning of the stars in the case of Ellen Page because, as it turns out, the day that this interview regarding the story was released also happened to coincide with the release of her new book called Page Boy, which was, as I mentioned, released the exact same day as this incident was revealed.
See, I want to give him a I want to give him a little bit more benefit of the doubt because
I
of a
know you want to, but come on.
I, I will explain why I'm willing to give him a little bit more benefit of the doubt here. Because when he decided to transition, um, the people the people writing Umbrella Academy wanted to make the transition part of the story, and Elliot offered to uh, forestall the announcement of the transition until after the season was wrapped, so that they didn't have to. Which tells me that at the very least, Paige is more sincere than the average trans trender. So
But the thing is,
I will give some leeway, although I'm still getting the innate, of all the things that never happened, that never happened the most vibe about it.
here's the thing that I doubt a bit. Um,
Hmm.
One, this person has talked about being depressed a number of times, and you know, people who transition have more likelihood of emotional issues than other demographics. And also, it just seems that this person follows a very weird pattern to me,
Hmm.
to where, all right, when gay pride was the hot subject for the left, this person came out as a lesbian, and then when people moved on to supporting transgenderism, this person comes out as transgender.
I mean, it's also possible that she didn't know much about transness before it became a wider known issue. So some benefit of the doubt on that, in that she, like you say, she does have the kind of effeminate, depressive vibe that a trans person usually has, and it does seem to be something consistent with um their career over the years. So like, I'm willing to give at least some leeway, but again, the alleged incident that is alleged to have happened, it's giving me the of all the things that never happened, that never happened the most vibe.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, because they claim that this came out years ago, it's going to be very difficult to disprove. Unlike with the Jussie Smollett thing, you could see videotapes and phone records and money
Okay,
records.
wait. Elliot claimed that the incident happened years ago.
Yes.
Okay, now all my benefit of the doubt is gone. If an incident like that happened and you are not smart enough to report it, my the burden of proof is still definitely on you to demonstrate some evidence.
Also, isn't like West Hollywood one of the most pro-gay parts of the entire country?
Yes, it it is to LA what I forget what part of New York is the gay section of New York, but it's effectively that portion of LA. It's the gay quarter, basically.
Yeah. So this story strains credulity.
Yeah, again, of all the things that never happened, that never happened the most. Although I will say that her story is at least more believable than Jesse's, so at least she's a better storyteller, if nothing else.
Well, yeah, but now it happened after the whole Justice Smollett thing, so now nobody believes it.
Yeah, again, of all the things that ever happened, that never happened the most. But eh.
Uh, all right.
I I, I hope she doesn't get pilloried like he did. Um and no, I
And
didn't I wasn't intending to misgender or anything. It's just the pronouns are I guess I should have defaulted to they. Never mind. But yeah, anyway, go ahead.
we've been going for a bit over an hour. Do you have any final thoughts about this about Pride Month and where it's all going?
Pride is a perfect example of one of my favorite phrases. This is why we can't have nice things. Cause I, cause I'm one of those gay people that's like, I just want to be able to walk down the street holding my eventual significant other's hand, and not have people stare or gross out or try to beat us up. Like, is that so much to ask?
We were there, and then they overshot.
Yeah, at no point would I ever and will I ever advocate for anything pedo-y or mappy. Just to be clear, like no, like the difference between gay sexuality and child sexuality is the John Stuart Mill harm principle. No one is harmed in a consensual adult gay relationship. The only thing you could say is that it's suboptimal because it doesn't biologically lead to children. But people are demonstrably harmed in a pedophilic relationship. In an epiphilic relationship, that's again, there's a gray area there. But in a straight up pedo relationship or minor attracted person relationship, the harm principle is violated, and fuck you.
Absolutely, and you know, I think that you know, I think that there are a lot of gay people out there who are tired of being associated with these people because
Yo,
a lot of them just want to get on and live their own lives and don't want to bother or be bothered by anyone else. But I think it's pretty clear that the alphabet pride people, they are very much out to conquer society. Like they want to seize control, seize positions of power, and force their ideology top down on everyone else.
and they won't be happy with a neutral position. They won't be happy with the tradcons are a laughing stock and nobody takes them seriously. They won't be happy until every standard that the tradcons feared gets Chad Yest into existence somehow. And I
And they
hate that.
view, and they view any efforts to stop or even slow them down as an outright attack against them, as if they are the victims.
Yep. Yep. They still believe in their heart of hearts that no progress has been made on the gay issue since the 80s. No no progress has been made on the civil rights issue since the 50s, and no progress has been made on the female rights issue since the 1890s or some shit. It's one of the most infuriating things about the SJWs. They will never acknowledge that they even made the slightest victory, and therefore they get to continue acting like the poor put upon rebels in perpetuity, even while they're sleeping in the imperial palace.
And I just want to say to them that I think these people need to be stopped soon because I don't want to live in any society that they would create.
No, no, I don't want to I don't want to live in any society where public morality is a thing, especially not strictly enforced authoritarian public morality. Morality belongs in the private sphere and only the private sphere. Public morality is bad for civilizations.
Everybody, I have been Mr. E.
I've been Dalton Mortimer, the Authenticator, and we have been the Duality of Man. Cheers, guys.
Bye, everybody.